Pinkerton is a womanizing rock star type of character, and by the end, I'm aware of how much damage it can do, and I don't really know what to do with it at this point.
Following the release of the Blue Album, Weezer gained new renowned rock fame. However, this new essence of celebrity status came at a high cost for frontman Rivers Cuomo. In Weezer's sophomore album, Cuomo's insecurities are fully revealed in an album full of screams, crying, and shredding of cellos. A mix of sexual frustration and raw production ended up revealing a gem not appreciated at its release. Today I will discuss my favorite album of all time, its original concept as a rock opera, and its depressing reception and effects on Rivers Cuomo. This is The Melancholy World, presented in Pinkerton. During the winter of 1994, Rivers Cuomo ventured to his home state of Connecticut for the holidays. The year 1994 proved to be a transformative one for the singer, as his dream of rock and roll fame had been achieved. However, such notoriety came with mixed emotions. In 1995, Rivers Cuomo began work on Weezer's follow-up to their self-titled album with a space rock opera titled Songs from the Black Hole. Songs from the Black Hole was conceived to be a science fiction story that told the tale of the crew members aboard the ship Betsy II, who have embarked on a galaxy-wide mission. Set in the year 2126, the opera was described as a tale of relationships, stardom, and life in Weezer. The crew members in the story were to be two females by the name of Laurel and Maria, two males named Juan and Don Doe, a robot named M1, and the main character, Jonas. The basic plot of the entire story is detailed in the opening track to the opera, titled Blast Off, in which Jonas hopes for the best on their mission. To quote Rivers Cuomo in a 2007 interview with the Rolling Stone,
"There's this crew, 3 guys, 2 girls, and a mechanoid that are on this mission in space to rescue somebody or something. The whole thing was really just an analogy for taking off, going out on the road and up the charts with a rock band, which is what was happening to me at the time I was writing this and feeling like I was lost in space."
This is where the first song of Pinkerton, Tired of Sex, comes in. Rivers Cuomo was unlike other rock stars. In interviews, he would often be quiet, unable to make eye contact with the interviewer, and would often get extremely too personal for comfort. Stardom had not changed who he always was at heart, a non-confrontational nerd who was afraid of social cues. When women would come to his hotel room while on tour for the Blue Album, they would excitedly be waiting outside his door talking amongst themselves. Rivers Cuomo at first wouldn't let them in. He would prefer to be alone, to lie in his bed until he fell asleep. Then one night while on tour, he gained courage. In an effort to ease his loneliness, he asked the women staying outside of his room to strip naked for him and to then lie in his bed. The women tittered and most of them left, but 4 of them stayed, and to his amazement, did as he asked. Such is the stereotypical life for a rock star, the idea of fame, money, drugs, and constant sex. But for Rivers Cuomo, all these encounters started to mean nothing. He was beginning to yearn for an emotional connection. Tired of Sex opens up Pinkerton with a brash drum opening and a rough synth, followed by groans of pain, setting up the entire tone of the record and what to expect. Matt Sharp and Brian Bell are echoing Rivers Cuomo's cries for help, that eventually lead into a raw guitar solo. It reminds me of Lightning. I absolutely love the entire thing. The way Rivers Cuomo screams and pushes his voice to its limits, it's so real. The perfect opening track, Pinkerton would not be Pinkerton without it. While in the process of creating Songs from the Black Hole and touring for the Blue Album, Rivers Cuomo became distraught.
Weezer was on tour supporting the first album and I got so bored. It was like the Groundhog Day thing on tour after a year and a half. And we toured through Boston and I went up to Harvard and walked around and I was like, I would just love to take a break, read and study, meet people and have relationships. So I filled out the application and they let me in.
Cuomo spent the fall of 1995 to the spring of 1997 taking classes at Harvard. While there, he suffered both emotionally and physically. Cuomo was born with his left leg shorter than the other, and in 1995, Rivers retrieved surgery to extend it. However, the recovery period from the operation proved to be excruciating. While at Harvard, Rivers spent much of his time in his dorm crying in pain, at times even needing a cane to get around to cope with the trauma. He felt like an outcast. The immense frustration translated into his Songs of the Black Hole project. In Getchoo, Jonas professes his love to someone in the sense of desperation for a relationship with them. Jonas admits that his situation is in fact embarrassing. He's pleading, almost on his knees, for this girl to take him into her life. He admits that he's basically harassing her at this point to accept his love, but that it's not too late to end this and accept him. If she just took a chance, she would then see that he's just not a freak, but a nice guy. The other side of the analysis coin tells that this track is actually about Rivers Cuomo's infidelities. Fans have made the conclusion that Cuomo has cheated on this girl, and that he's realized his mistake and wants to fix the relationship. At first I didn't really like this song, its hook was really bothersome, it just seemed so slobby. However, it grew on me. Its desperate plea is translated well into song. It's not my go-to Pinkerton track, but it's not awful. Following the surgery on his left leg, Rivers Cuomo grew deeper into depression.
It took me to a place, emotionally, where the whole idea of this whole rock opera started to feel too whimsical for where I was emotionally going through the pain of the procedure. So I scrapped the whole idea and went to a more serious and dark place.
With Songs of the Black Hole being trashed, Cuomo translated some of the ideas into a main rock album. He wanted to create an album that was autobiographical of his life at that moment. As stated in an interview, Rivers Cuomo suggests that as much as 90% of the album was direct and not at all entirely fiction. He truly felt this way. In No Other One, Cuomo tells of a relationship between him and his cheating drug addict of a girlfriend. I think we've all known someone similar in this type of personality. To the listener, they realize that Cuomo deserves far better than this addict, but Cuomo feels otherwise. He's convinced himself that this is the best he can possibly get. He can easily have another body to sleep with as a rock star, but will be unable to find an emotional connection as much as he has with this cheater. It's the idea that no one knows her as much as he does. He's convinced himself that she needs him in order for her to survive. She in turn has caught him in a trap and has manipulated him to stay in this relationship, perhaps due to her good looks and fake essence that she cares about him. He in turn tries to justify all that she's done to him. Maybe he did deserve it, or maybe it's best to keep it all in the past. At the end of the day, it is all deemed as pathetic and saddening. Without her, he truly believes he's nothing. It's really fear. That's probably the worst of it. That is the real enemy that stops us from full potential. And why bother? Rivers Cuomo unleashes his strong desire for a girlfriend, but winds up orbiting around a girl instead without admitting his true feelings. Plenty of people have been there before. Why Bother's original placement within Rivers Cuomo's space opera occurs at the end of the story, when Jonas's world comes crumbling down, realizing that all he's aspired for has been for nothing. His physical attachment towards this girl has conceived emotional attachment that isn't based on merit. The ultimate fear of rejection from girls who have broken his heart in the past is amplified with his screams and crying. All the hollering makes for an intense listen. A crunchy song that is another example of the pending contribution Pinkerton would bring upon the emo genre, of not having enough confidence to even believe in yourself. A short track, but one that should not be forgotten about. While at Harvard, Cuomo found himself reading a Japanese opera titled Madama Butterfly, based on the short story of the same name. The opera inspired Rivers Cuomo to name his sophomore album Pinkerton, based on one of the primary characters from the story. In the opera Madame Butterfly, B.F. Pinkerton, a lieutenant from the United States Navy, finds himself marrying a 15-year-old Japanese girl named Scorcho-san, also known as his Butterfly, while renting a house in Nagasaki. Pinkerton is only dating her for his convenience. Perhaps only for his sexual pleasure or for company. He is awaiting orders to return to the United States, and where he can find an American woman in which he can truly love. The relation to Madama Butterfly in the album Pinkerton and its Japanese elements are not a surprise. The song Across the Sea brings such elements almost to its complete zenith. In the winter of 1995, while on the tipping point of trashing the concept of Songs from the Black Hole and conceiving Pinkerton, Cuomo received a letter during a depressing semester at Harvard from a fan. In Across the Sea, Cuomo tells of said letter. This young Japanese girl wrote to him asking him about his life, and Cuomo became completely enamored with the letter. He describes licking and sniffing the envelope, wishing for a physical connection with her, wondering about what her room looks like, and even how she, Ew. One of my favorite lines off the record, "So you send me your love from all around the world, as if I could live on words and dreams and a million screams. Oh, how I need a hand in mine to feel." I think about this line a lot. Makes me think about certain friends of mine and how desperate they can be for love. The idea of a long distance relationship and falling in love with someone you don't even know that well, and have never even seen in real life, can it work? Or will it end with regret?
When I got the letter, I fell in love with her. It was such a great letter. I was very lonely at the time, but at the same time I was very depressed that I would never meet her. Even if I did see her, she was probably some 14-year-old girl who didn't even speak English.
The Japanese fan eventually did find out that Across the Sea was about her. In a 2008 interview, Cuomo states so.
Yeah, she knows it's her. When I wrote the song, I took her letter and literally lifted lines straight from the letter and put them into the song. So she actually collects royalties on that song.
Across the Sea was the final push for Cuomo to commit to the idea of Pinkerton. Without it, we may have gotten his space opera instead. Rivers Cuomo did not start work on Pinkerton with heavy stride. He literally couldn't due to his physical injury. He was emotionally unstable, and when he started work on Pinkerton, his bandmates didn't take long to notice his depression. Nevertheless, they persisted with Cuomo, and Matt Sharp's influence helped develop the sound, inspired by his own band, The Rentals, which served as one of the reasons why Songs of the Black Hole ended, due to its sound being too similar to Sharp's first album from The Rentals. And possibly the most friendly for the radio song on the record, Cuomo mourns the loss of his past and yearns for his youth. The music video is hilarious. A pizza delivery woman deals with her job that doesn't pay enough and that she hates. A fun time that yearns for better and is somewhat depressing. Within the song, all these new pressures attributed by stardom along with excruciating knee pain that requires him to use a cane to get around, not to mention his anxieties and fears towards women, have started to make him crack. God, why can't things be like how they used to be? Cuomo needs to take back his life again. Screw all this bullshit that's surrounding him currently. He wants to have fun again. In fact, be confident again. He remembers when he would go to clubs and dance his heart out and just let go. He wants to become a pig or a dog and not give a shit who he has sex with and not worry about any emotional attachment whatsoever. All this yearning culminates into an explosion of something beautiful. And possibly my favorite moment of Pinkerton, The Good Life enters an intoxicating solo, representing Cuomo's self-degradation. The solo sounds so whimsical and dreamlike, as if Cuomo's only way to feel young again is in the stream, one he never wants to wake up from. But as the solo begins to heat up again, everything starts to fall apart. No, he can't go back. No, he can't be confident again. Everything is bleak, and he has to deal with it this way. Rivers Cuomo's route while making Pinkerton had him anxious. Compared to the high production quality of the Blue album, Pinkerton was miles more raw and intense. While at Harvard, Rivers Cuomo found himself crushing on a redheaded classmate who could play the cello. Before he left the campus that made him miserable, he decided to write out his heart. With no restraints, Rivers Cuomo created El Scorcho. With its weird lyrical status as Pinkerton's lead single, it helped make the entire record flop alongside with it. Various radio stations refused to play the song altogether, including MTV. You know, back when they were actually playing music videos, they gave the music video minimal promotion. Before the album had even released, people had begun to get turned off by it. And when fans first heard the lyrics of El Scorcho, they began to scratch their heads. They were wondering what had happened to the geeky but yet charming videos of both Buddy Holly and the Sweater Song. Where was the crunchy guitars of Say It Ain't So? It was obvious that the eventual release of Pinkerton on September 24th, 1996 would shock the music world, and not in a good way. Oh my god, where do I begin with the lyrics to this unorthodox track? In El Scorcho, Rivers' headspace is completely scattered. His head is running in circles on what to do, because he has a crazy crush on this girl, and this time he has some sort of emotional connection towards her. One on a personal level. After countless hours of hanging out and being with her, he's come to a crossroads on what to do. Admit your feelings and have your heart crushed, or have this be the beginning of an incredible relationship. It's a hot and spicy mess. Hell, the name of the song is a direct reference to the Del Taco sauce, Del Scorcho. I'm not joking. The famous line, "God damn you half Japanese girls," is essentially a cry for help in terms of his preferred ethnicity in women. Cuomo admits so in a 1996 interview.
Well, I suppose that halfway through writing the album, I started to realize or become aware of a pattern in my life. That I seemed to be having a lot of disastrous encounters with half-Japanese girls. And then it developed into disastrous encounters with Asian girls of all sorts. Yeah, I suppose it's fair to say that I'm fascinated by Asian girls. For some reason, they're particularly beautiful to me. I don't know why.
Yep, perhaps you wouldn't be surprised to know that Cuomo is now fluent in Japanese and is married to a Japanese woman. However, as the song progresses, he references a redhead as well, but be wary of what I'm about to tell you, so hear me out on this one. In October of 1995, the Japanese mecha anime Neon Genesis Evangelion premiered to critical acclaim, becoming a hit to mainstream audiences. Around the same time, Rivers Cuomo dropped the idea of the space opera and conceived Pinkerton. Combined with his obsession of Japanese culture and Japanese girls at the time, is it possible to suggest that these lyrics are referring to the redhead Asuka from the show who is also half Japanese? Pinkerton came out in the fall of 1996, so it's possible Cuomo was a fan. To support the theory even more, watch the music video for El Scorcho and notice how Rivers Cuomo's dressed compared to how the main character of Neon Genesis, Shinji, is.
Coincidence? I think not!
Yeah, the merits to this theory should be taken with a grain of salt. The rest of the song is an incoherent mess, and I love its pop culture references. It's both depressing and quirky. Cuomo's jumbled ideas turns into cries in the chorus, yelling that he's a lot like this girl he likes. They share so much in common, why not date? Why not start an entire venture together? Hell, he even invited her to a Green Day concert with him. In response, she told him she doesn't even know who the hell those guys are. This makes him even more enamored by her and her avoidance of the mainstream. He just finds her so unique and one of a kind. However, he doesn't want to take this chance. Even when he reads through her diary and finds that she is listening to Cho-Cho-san, the character from the opera Cuomo has been obsessed with, Madame Butterfly, he still can't do it. No matter how much they have in common, he gets upset. Why can't she just make the first move instead? He admits how sad the situation is, that he has to make an entire album dedicated to various failed admissions towards girls he had crushes on. My favorite lyrics in the song, just because of how they're delivered. I'll bring home the turkey if you bring home the bacon. The way Cuomo quivers this brings out an emotional climax to the entire track. It's so goddamn good. El Scorcho is an experience, one in which I think we've all been through, about the need to conquer one's own fear, but falling short of doing so. It should be no surprise to note that Rivers Cuomo was going through something during the development of Pinkerton. Once again, while at Harvard, Rivers Cuomo noticed a girl in one of his classes, one in which he fantasized about marrying one day. Then one day she came to school with a button of a pink triangle on her sleeve, crushing his dreams of a life with her. And so he decided to write a song about it. Pink Triangle was originally going to be released as a single to promote Pinkerton, and in preparation for its release, Julie Kramer, a photographer who was friends with Rivers, took various photos of Cuomo in drag for the song's cover. Oh my god, this is so scandalous! The song is really funny, and it continues to be funny until it happens to you. I can only imagine what it feels like to be mad crushing on a girl only to discover that she's actually gay, and gay alone. The lyrics are somewhat cringy, but I think that's the charm of Weezer in general. When the single was eventually submitted to Geffen, it did not do well. It was the 90s, and talking about lesbians was quite risky, so needless to say, the promotion for said single was abandoned. And to make matters worse, the girl he was crushing on wasn't even gay! She was straight and just showing her support for the gay community! God damn it!
There are some lyrics on the album that you might think are mean or sexist. I will feel genuinely bad if anyone feels hurt by my lyrics, but I wanted these songs to be an exploration of my dark side. You may be more willing to forgive the lyrics if you see them as passing low points in a larger story. The story of the last 2 years of my life, and as you're probably aware, those have been 2 very weird years.
On September 24th, 1996, Weezer released their sophomore album, Pinkerton, the culmination of Rivers Cuomo's life following the release of the Blue Album. He had gone through hell to craft this thing, at times even confusing his own bandmates, and even frustrating them. While creating El Scorcho's music video, Rivers Cuomo re-edited it to have the majority of the music video's focus to be on him. Rivers Cuomo wanted to be the frontman of the band and have it become more artsy and intellectual. Matt Sharp, the bassist of the band, hated this idea. He wanted to pursue the comedic and lighthearted music videos of the Blue Album, to have the band not take itself too seriously. Even in concerts, Sharp was seen as the life of the band, energetic, constantly moving around. He wanted Weezer to be a group similar to, say, that of the Beach Boys and the Beatles. That no one person defined the entire band. This was the first of Cuomo and Sharp's disagreements and tensions building, but nevertheless, the band joined Rivers on his emotional record, and the climax of Pinkerton, Falling For You, brings the entire self-degrading record to yet another crisis. For this section in particular, I consulted the help of the podcast WeAreWeezer, a Weezer-based podcast that researches various Weezer songs and brings forth facts about them, not to mention various interviews with people who love Weezer. Here's what Rachel, the creator of the podcast, had to say about Falling For You.
Hey Larry! Falling For You was recorded in 1996 at Sound City Studios in Los Angeles during Rivers' spring break at Harvard, and it's sandwiched between The Good Life and Butterfly on the Rivers Cuomo song chronology, which makes a lot of sense because it has a really similar feel to The Good Life in my opinion. According to Setlist FM, Falling For You has been played by Weezer only 99 times live and 5 times by Rivers alone. Seems a little low to me. I think the song is super sexy, like many others on Pinkerton. And when we hit the last verse before the final chorus, Rivers is almost scream singing, and one can't help but get the chills. It's the perfect song to blast in the car and sing along with at the top of your lungs on a road trip.
If you want to know more about Rachel and her wonderful Weezer-oriented podcast, I'll link it down below. I'll also link an episode in which she interviews me and my love for Weezer amongst other things. I had a great time on the show. In Falling For You, Rivers Cuomo finally catches a break and finds a girl who's actually interested in him. Perhaps the same girl from El Scorcho, as both these songs reference each other. In El Scorcho, Cuomo mentions a redhead who plays the cello, and once again refers to her cello found in her basement in this track. I'd like to think that Cuomo finally worked out the courage to ask this girl out, and she said yes. Now the real challenge begins. Cuomo's newfound relationship has him falling hard for this girl, and he doesn't see this ending well if their relationship is unable to persist. Cuomo finds himself inadequate. The girl who has shown interest in him has had experiences before with other guys, and Cuomo doesn't know much about relationships. He doesn't find himself worthy. The lyrics, "What could you possibly see in little old 3-chord me?" amplify this point. The screams of new love. It's so ugly and the guitar is screeching. An honest song that is emotional and isn't afraid to show what love actually is. One of the greatest songs in Weezer's entire discography.
When you kiss me.
Pinkerton did not do well. Considered a very brave record by critics at first, but also as one that was juvenile and a mixed bag. Weezer fans of the Blue Album were scratching their heads when they listened to this record. In terms of sales, the album debuted at number 19 on the Billboard charts, only selling 47,000 records, far below the opening numbers of the Blue Album. In fact, at the end of 1996, Rolling Stone declared Pinkerton as the 3rd worst album of the year. In 1997, Cuomo wrote in his diary,
"This has been a tough year. It's not just that the world has said Pinkerton isn't worth a shit, but the Blue Album wasn't either. It was a fluke. I'm a shitty songwriter. Everybody hated it. Critics, the majority of our fans, most of my friends and family, the other band members. Everyone thought it was an embarrassment. One of the worst albums of all time."
It would only get worse from here. In the later half of 1997, Weezer's fan club founders and best friends, Michael and Carly Allen, were killed in a car accident. Following a show in which the band paid tribute to them, Weezer went on a long hiatus. In one of the bonus tracks off of Pinkerton, Tragic Girl, Cuomo tells of a breakup, perhaps with the same girl described in both El Scorcho and Falling For You. They didn't work out due to not being able to resolve issues that had been plaguing them. Rivers wanted to believe that he had found the one, that everything in this relationship was going great. But the reality is, life comes at you fast. The sense of optimism is beat out of him. He realizes that he's just going to be this girl's latest tragedy, and that whenever she thinks of him again, it's all going to be negative, and all those positive emotions they once felt toward each other, it'll all have been rotted away. He'll be nothing more than a bad memory.
But I feel sorry.
During Weezer's hiatus, Matt Sharp left the band for undisclosed reasons. Some say it was due to the negative reaction towards Pinkerton, or the growing drama between him and Rivers. Matt Sharp went to work on his own band, The Rentals. For years, Rivers and Matt refused to work with each other. Rivers, now in the new millennium, said this about Pinkerton in 2001.
"It's a hideous record. It was such a hugely painful mistake that happened in front of hundreds and thousands of people and continues to happen on a grander and grander scale and just won't go away. It's like getting really drunk at a party and spilling your guts in front of everyone and feeling incredibly great and cathartic about it, and then waking up next morning and realizing what a complete fool you've made of yourself.
On Butterfly, Rivers Cuomo details the ending of Madame Butterfly from the perspective of Lieutenant Pinkerton. In Madame Butterfly, Lieutenant Pinkerton leaves behind his 15-year-old wife, Cho-Cho-san, also nicknamed Butterfly, and he returns to America. Butterfly was so in love with Pinkerton, she even converted to Christianity for him, a sin in Japanese culture. For 3 long years, she waited for him, and even raised their son who she gave birth to. Completely loyal to Pinkerton, she is excited when word breaks out that he's coming back to Nagasaki. However, Pinkerton has remarried to a new lover named Kate. Pinkerton can't break the news to Butterfly. He admits that he's a coward. Kate instead breaks the news to her. Butterfly is so devastated by this, she says farewell to her son, and she takes out her seppuku knife and commits suicide. Pinkerton then rushes in to try and stop her from dying, but it's too late. He's devastated, and above all, he's sorry. At the end of Songs from the Black Hole, Jonas is left stranded on a planet with all his friends flying away from it. The planet is being slowly swallowed by the sun, and Jonas refuses to escape. He stares out at the stars and prospers about his life and all the damage he has done and has undergone. His fellow crew members hate him due to his selfishness and cheating. Jonas accepts his demise and chooses to die as his form of a long-time peace, and as his own punishment, a long-time sunshine. Following the release of Pinkerton and the deaths of 2 of his best friends, Rivers Cuomo entered a deep depression. He returned to Harvard for a semester in 1997, and then in 1998 returned to LA to try and write songs for Weezer's 3rd album, but couldn't come up with anything substantial. From 1998 to 1999, he moved to an apartment under a freeway in Culver City. He became isolated. He unplugged his phone and painted the walls and ceiling of his apartment black and covered the windows. Refusing to interact with people, he was afraid to ever be as personal ever again. However, the story doesn't end here. In the years that followed Pinkerton's release, Pinkerton has become a timeless classic. Critics have learned to appreciate and love its honesty and bravery. What makes Pinkerton such a masterpiece in my eyes is its relatability and its brutal truth. It defines love as something that shouldn't always be romanticized. Love is painful and complicated. It hurts and can tear you apart. The feelings towards someone and hoping they feel the same way can feel hopeless. I've been through it, and I know countless of others who've been through it as well. In the end, it is records like this one that helps the individual to get through low points of love, to know that you're not alone in your emotions. In Pinkerton, Rivers Cuomo risked ridicule of his personal life. Although at various points in the album it may come off as creepy and pathetic, it's beautiful in a cathartic way, for it is a representation for what it's like to be in love. The various ramblings and insecurities that go through one's head performed in the most raw essence. And that, by all means, is simply brilliant.
Love.